it's Tuesday. I can't believe how quickly the weeks are flying by, but it's Tuesday, 12:30, and hello to everybody. I'm so excited that you're joining us today for this week's episode of the Mindset Michelle TV show. And today's extra special guest is the lovely Ortal Green. Hello, Ortal.
Hi, Michelle, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful show. I'm really excited to be here today.
And we're excited to have you here, Ortal. Now, Ortal not only has an interesting and wonderful name, but she's got all sorts of interesting and wonderful stories that she's going to share with us today as we talk about her and her journey from being a computer scientist to being a mum to having a husband to all of the different things that have happened in the journey of her incredible life to this point today where she's now going to share with us about design thinking and her company, Glittering Minds. So welcome, Ortal. Share with us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I actually started my career as a computer scientist. I studied computer science and started to work for IBM Research Lab, working at the forefront of technology and working on the next thing that's going to happen. And it was really exciting and interesting for me. So for quite a few years, I was working solely within the technology space and found it really interesting. And then I gave birth to my first son and then my second and my third. I have three lovely boys. And in parallel to raising my boys, two very interesting things happened. So one of them is I started to feel that working in the technology space and being focused on technology is not enough for me anymore. I felt that something is missing, like a sense of purpose. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not giving enough to society. How am I contributing to the broader community? So I felt that I need to search for something more meaningful. And in that journey of searching of what it is, how I can contribute to society, I started to develop my knowledge on creative thinking and how you develop creative thinking and what it is. And I learned about design thinking and which I should mention at high level what it is, because maybe not everyone is aware of design thinking. So at a high level, design thinking is a combination of approaches, mindset, methodology, and tools that enables you to reach innovative solutions to problems with the people who face the problem. So you co-designing solutions with the people to bring them a solution that brings them value and actually a solution they desire. So I fell in love with design thinking because it encapsulated everything that I love and enjoy doing: the creative thinking, the critical thinking, the problem solving, engaging with people, collaboration, and really helping people by solving problems. And while I was busy on that side of my journey, I also took a lot of interest in my son's education, because I wanted to do what they're doing at school, like any other parents, I guess. I was very interested to understand what they're doing there. So apart from asking them questions and looking at the homework they bring home, and I volunteered a lot at their schools. So I spent quite a lot of time in their classrooms, and I went on an excursion with them. And what was emerging for me, what was starting to get quite clear, is that there is a gap within our education system in terms of what they teach children and how they operate, and where they need to be. I felt that they're not really preparing them for the world we have today, because the world has changed so much, and the skills required today for success, the skills and mindset that children need today, are quite different than what they needed 50 years ago. And I felt that there is a gap in the education system, that my children are not developing at school the life skills and mindset they need for success, like creative thinking, collaboration, empathy, resilience, problem solving. And then I thought I probably should combine these two interesting things I'm kind of discovering now, design thinking and children. I thought, what if I teach children design thinking as a way to develop their important life skills. And I was so curious to try it out that I created a workshop, a 2 hours workshop for children, primary age children. And I ran it at different holiday programs. And immediately I could see that the children really loved it, because it has everything they enjoy doing. It's the creative thinking, it's bringing their own ideas. And I still remember in one of the workshops when I encouraged them to have no limitation on to their ideas, just come up even with the most craziest idea they can come up with. One of the children said, "Really? Can I really come up with whatever idea I want to?" And I said, "Yes, of course, please do." So they were really excited.
What an interesting journey it's been for you, Ortal. You know, the journey from the computer science all the way through to setting up this program for children and running it, and in a sense understanding that the same ways that you were learning how to think as a computer scientist to solve problems was some of those key elements that you needed to think about in terms of your mindset, and then identifying that was a gap within the education system for your children and for them developing your mindsets. So I'm really interested, because you've obviously thought about mindset and thought about problem solving quite a lot. So for a lot of the people who are watching today and might not necessarily have specialised or worked in this area, I'm sure that they would be quite interested in, what do you think is success then? What does success mean to you?
It's a very big question, Michelle, which has lots of layers. And I guess you can always zoom in and out, because you can look at it with a smaller lens, with a closer lens of specific things in your life. And you can also look at the big picture. So I would kind of zoom out a bit and say that for me, success, firstly, as a parent, success for me would mean to raise well-rounded, confident, happy children. This is definitely a big goal for me as a mother. And also the other thing is to really feel that I make a difference in the world, that I really contribute to other people and help other people be successful. Because basically we all interlinked and intertwined with each other. And I think by helping others become successful, helping them on their journey, I'm actually achieving the best. It's the best goal, right? It's the best outcome that you can hope for from the time we have here on planet Earth.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot from people, especially people like yourself that are in some sort of service role. And I know people think of service industries more as, you know, like McDonald's or something. But I think anybody that's coaching and running your types of programs or our types of programs is in those service roles. So it's really lovely to hear that you define success as success with your children, becoming great people, and with the people that you help with what you do in the world and your company does in the world in terms of creating those success mindsets. So that's a beautiful way of looking at success. And I know that as we were preparing for today, there are a number of different tips that you thought might be important or helpful to people watching. Can you describe some of those tips, especially from that mindset lens around design thinking? What is it that people can use in terms of design thinking to create a more successful mindset?
Yeah, definitely. So the first one is believing in yourself. And this is tied closely with design thinking, because when you learn and practice design thinking, you basically learn the tools and the right approach to solve problems. And then you develop that creative confidence that you can solve any problem, because you have the tools in your belt and the right approach. And by the way, I hear that from teachers that participate in Glitter in Mind program, how their students are not shying away from difficult problems anymore, because they know how to approach it and they know what the steps they need to do in order to solve the problems. So believing in yourself is a big part of mindset for success.
And I guess that example you were using earlier with the child that was saying, oh, I can actually do this, you know, that that recognition, and it's so important for children to be able to learn as they go along, you know, that they're supported in what they do, and that to believe in themselves, even if they're not always successful doing it, but to believe that they're taking the actions and moving towards what they want is the important part.
Exactly, that's true. Giving them the confidence that they know what the steps that they need to take in order to get somewhere. That's true. The second one that I would say is having a bias for action, because often I hear people sharing with me their ideas, their goals, their aspirations. And 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 and 4, 5 years later down the line, when I continue having conversation with them, they still haven't done anything to reach that goal. So it's great to have ideas and goals and aspiration, but if you're not taking the steps to get there, it will stay as a dream. So having a bias for action and taking actions all the time is very important for a successful mindset and to reach success, whatever success means for you.
I couldn't agree more. And a large part of that bias, and I like how you phrased it, the bias for action, is I think it's like exercise or like any kind of habit that you form. You need to build it into your everyday life and build in, you know, that bias for taking action as something that if you don't have it as a call to action or a deadline, then all too often, as you and I both know, with all of the unpublished authors out there that want to write a book but haven't written a book, that want to do an activity but haven't done the activities. One of the ways to train yourself to keep doing those activities is to actually set it up as an everyday habit.
Exactly, yeah, that is spot on, Michelle. And the third one I want to talk about is embracing failure. You know, failure has a negative connotation, and I feel many people still see it as something that they need to avoid or as something that they may be ashamed of and don't want to share if they experience failure. But failure is part of our journey. This is what brings us to success. This is kind of the precursor to success. Because failure, it's the best teacher, basically. I mean, when we fail, if we stop and really take a good look at it and think about it, reflect on it, we can learn so much from our failures, and then we can learn what we actually need to do in order to reach success. So I see failure as an integral part of the journey and an important one. So as part of developing a mindset for success, there is a need to shift how we perceive failure from a bad thing to something that actually helps us achieve success.
It's actually an interesting question, isn't it? This whole concept around it's still not okay for many people to fail or to not succeed the first time, the second time at what they're wanting to do, especially given that this is the week where Richard Branson has now gone up into space for the first time, you know, the first billionaire to have his own private flight, essentially. But that took 17 years, and I'm sure it took a lot of failure over those 17 years. But isn't it interesting that even though we have, and we've always had these types of examples of people failing quite a lot before they've actually achieved their goals and their dreams, but within society, it's still such a no-no to fail and to not succeed at everything. And social media and the digital world has made it even worse to kind of celebrate, you know, any failure. You know, I went for a job but didn't get it, maybe from some of my clients share with me, but they wouldn't share that on, you know, social media. But if they were to share that, then other people would share it and normalize that whole area of, you know, like Richard Branson, it might take 17 times going for a job, but then they get their dream job that 17th time.
Yeah, that is so true. And we're still not there, and it's a shame because, like you said, if people will talk about it more openly and embrace it, and then that will become the norm, and it will become okay, and it will become part of the journey. Because all of us face failure. I mean, I don't know any one person that hasn't failed in many different things. So why are we trying to hide it? This is just part of our journey, and we should accept and embrace it. So I'm hoping maybe out of that discussion, maybe people will feel more comfortable and confident to share their failure, so others can learn from that as well.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I love doing this show, because we can help. This is one of the ways that we can normalize. You know, it took Richard Branson 17 years. So if it takes you 17 days or weeks to get the dream job, then, you know, you're still better than Richard Branson. So, you know, when you compare it in that sort of perspective, people can change their mindset and can change their thinking. It's just using examples and reframing them to support you with your journey, whatever that may be.
Yes, for sure. And actually that leads me to the fourth tip, which I wanted to share, which is seeing obstacles as opportunities. Because often, or sometimes people, when they have obstacles, especially if they're big ones, so firstly, the immediate response is feeling like a victim. Why is this happening to me? And everything is ruined and so on. But actually, when we choose, because it's a choice, when we choose to look at an obstacle as an opportunity, then we can apply creative thinking and find new ways to go about what we want to achieve, and maybe even better ways that we haven't thought about before because we were already on a particular path. So we never stopped to think whether there are better ways to go about it. And for me, like I mentioned to you before, with COVID last year, with a harsh and long lockdown we had here in Victoria, then that happened when my program gathered momentums at schools, and I was, supposed to meet the Minister of Education, and everything was going wonderfully. And then everything was shut down. And, instead of saying, oh my God, that's it, my vision is gone, my dream is gone, I stopped and thought, okay, I have this huge obstacle. Now, how can I find opportunities and new ways to go about my vision with this big obstacle when schools are closed, when COVID is going on, and I don't know how long it's going to last? And so I actually changed the delivery model of my program to an online one, to one that actually opened a lot of opportunities for me, because now I can reach any school across the world that has internet access, which wasn't the case before. So it's actually, this obstacle propelled me for new heights, which I haven't imagined before COVID.
And that's so true. I completely agree. Everybody, not just in Australia, but many people across the world went into a lot of fear of, and understandably so, when COVID came along. But out of that fear came a lot of gems and areas that people hadn't really thought of before. So even in your example, you went from looking at, well, Melbourne and Melbourne schools are my market, to now, after COVID, the globe, the world is your market. And so it would, if you were to actually take yourself away from COVID and all the terrible things that have happened with that, and to again being given the opportunity, you have 3 months of discomfort versus changing your mindset to the world as your oyster rather than Melbourne as your only opportunity. Many people would go, well, okay, a little bit of uncomfortableness, and some people have quite difficult times, but it is looking for, well, what opportunities are coming out of that for you, and from having to think, and I love how you describe, how can I overcome this obstacle? What is it that I can do to hold on to your vision and keep going for it, even with this obstacle in front of you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's basically what helps people. That's what, if they shift their thinking, and we spoke about it before, once you shift your thinking, that basically creates that successful mindset. And maybe for some people, it's not always that easy to shift their thinking, because, often we're people of habits, right? As humans, we love our habits and we have an habitual way of thinking as well. But if you put enough effort, you can actually change the way of thinking and create for yourself a mindset for success, which is so powerful.
Exactly. And that's where I like to describe it to people as train track. So imagine you've got this train track, and your brain with all the neurons and everything goes down that train track. And what you want to be doing is, if those thoughts, behaviors, habits, patterns come up, is you actually want to do what they call a pattern interrupt and go, okay, instead of going into the I can't, there's COVID, there's this, there's that, there's whatever else it may be as a challenge, you go, well, okay, like Richard Branson, he took 17 years, and whoever else I want to use as an example, they eventually achieved what they wanted to do, but they didn't stay on that same train track, or in this case, a spaceship going out into space. They actually adapted, which is what design thinking helps you to do. It goes, well, okay, this is the problem at this moment in time. Think and change, think and change, think and change. And that's what programs like mine and what I encourage everybody to do, which is to keep finding things that work for them, to help them to, like Richard Branson, go, okay, this isn't going to work to get me to space, so I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, and to keep changing how they look at things so that they can then identify ways that help them to overcome, or you to overcome, your own obstacles in life, whatever they may be.
Yeah, because you start with one problem, but like you said, as you go along your journey, you find that every so often you'll need to reframe the problem. So you need to look at it differently. And because things change around us all the time. So we have to keep reframing and change our perspective and how we look at the problem in order to keep going and find the right way.
And also the information that you have when you start at this point is completely different to the information you have here. So if you stay on that same path, you're still trying to solve that problem back here. And that's why you want to keep shifting and changing. And I've worked in corporate space and transformation for many years, and it's fascinating, you know, whether it's the COVID Safe Act from the government, the federal government, that they're still spending $100,000 a week on, that doesn't work and nobody's using. So they're still on that kind of trajectory, instead of adapting and going, well, it's not been adopted, it doesn't work, what do we do, what do we do, what do we do?
Yeah.
So, you know, another wonderful example where design thinking could help them in very practical ways to break out of doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result.
Yeah, exactly. It's called path dependence, where you choose to go on a particular path. And because you chose it already based on some information you had before, you keep going without stop to think and look, is that the right way to go? Does it really help me achieve what I wanted to achieve? So often people continue to go on a specific path because they started going on that path, although it's not useful anymore, it's not beneficial anymore, and there is a better path for them to take. So yeah, you're right. There is a need to keep reflecting and thinking and observing and seeing whether the path you're on is the right one, or is it time to change your path.
And some of the research that I've seen coming out around going back to work post-COVID and all of the other different elements about working from home or working in the office, one of the interesting things there is around having to redefine what does work mean and what does work mean in terms of location-centric. So we're all from generations where location-centric means you go into an office and you work with people in the office. But the gig economy and all of the other technology-based elements that are coming through now mean that work is very much redefined in different ways. So the whole 9 to 5 and all of that means very different things. And I think that having that, again, that mindset that, you know, everybody that comes into my office needs to sit at a desk and be there, and that's how we get results, compared to, okay, they're at home, they're at work, they're, you know, and solving those different problems of you still need to get that work done and have engaged and happy workforces. But how do you actually get there, given that most of the parameters are still designed around getting bums on seats in an office building? So all of that paradigm needs to shift.
Yeah, and this is where you need to be open-minded, because some still think that if you're not at the office between 9 to 5, then you're not doing the work. So this is where we need to be open-minded of different ways and different approaches, and because things change, and you're right. And COVID, I think, pushed that even further, because that trend started before COVID, but now with COVID, it's pushed it way, way far. And I think more and more organizations realize now that we're not going back to the way we used to work. This is a new reality, a new world, and we need to cater for different ways of working, and different people will have different preferences as well. And
well, if you think of it even down to key performance indicators, and in HR, you know, absenteeism, the number of people away sick for whatever reason, would have been a big indicator. And what if that indicator no longer works because they're actually absent from the office, but they're working, you know, 2 hours every 3 hours throughout the day, and then having breaks in between to take care of children or whatever it might be. So they're actually present, but in a very different form, in a different way to what they've been measuring and reporting on before.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and
So I can see that we're getting towards time, but I know that the audience, they love to ask me to ask this question around, if you were giving advice to your younger self, what sort of advice do you think you would give?
Yeah, I would say to myself, just ignore all the naysayer, all the people who try to limit you. And sometimes it might not be easy to identify these people, because sometimes it not be a naysayer at your face. It might be someone that appears to be like they're looking after your best interest, and they're really looking after you and want to help you. But basically what they're saying, if you really listen carefully, is they're saying you can't do that. They put limitation around you. And I think it's important just to understand that this is what they're saying, and ignore it, and believe in yourself and continue on that path and do what you believe you need to do, and what you reach further and higher. Don't let anybody else put boundaries around you. That's what would have said to myself. Yeah.
That's such a wonderful perspective of looking at things. And one of the things I didn't learn until I was a bit older as well was around cocooning ideas. So, and it's very natural for many people to go, oh, I've got this great idea, I want to go do this, this, and this. And then what happens is you get all of the different opinions and thoughts, etc. And that can dilute your initial enthusiasm and energy around it. So I agree, you know, sometimes it's not maybe just not sharing it with everybody as well, and more of that cocooning. So that what I do a lot with my clients is talk about sitting with it. So, you know, you want to make this major decision in your life or for your business. So if you were to sit with that decision for a little while, what does it feel like? What would it look like? What would it sound like? Whereas if they share that idea or share that, you know, business decision with a wide range of people, they'll get everybody's experiences and they'll get everybody's insights, but it may actually, like you're saying, detract from their passion or enthusiasm about going and doing it. And as you can see, when you look at a lot of different case studies or examples in business, even if there was a product that existed previously, if somebody comes along with a better product, and that's where, you know, the greatest example is always, you know, the car replaced the horse, but what customers were asking for was a faster horse. So yes. If he had have been asking all his friends, they would have said, oh no, people won't move away from their horses because, you know, they've invested money in this and that. So I think that that's a really good insight. And if people wanted to get hold of you and to talk some more about these fabulous programs that you're running for schools, what's the best way to contact you?
So obviously via LinkedIn is a good way to reach out and start a conversation, or through my website, glitterinminds.com.au. Either way, whatever is more convenient for people.
And Ortal, O-R-T-A-L. So just I'll say it out loud as well, so that if people are listening in, they also can see that Ortal Green is the name to look for on LinkedIn. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today, Ortal.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thanks again for having me.
And thank you to everybody watching today. It's been my pleasure, as always, to have a fabulous guest again on this week to share more insights into how to create a successful mindset. And I hope that these tools and insights really help you to get through whatever's going on in your life today, to take action like we were talking about earlier. And from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.